The day I turned the tables on my racist neighbor, I had just moved into a new neighborhood, excited to start fresh. On the surface, it seemed like a picturesque suburban area, white picket fences, kids playing in the streets, and friendly faces everywhere. But beneath that facade lurked my next-door neighbor, Greg. He was the kind of guy who thought he owned the block and had no problem making it clear that he didn't think I belonged there. From the moment I moved in, Greg made snide comments about my background. "You sure you can afford this place?" he'd sneer as I carried in boxes. He even went so far as to complain to the HOA about my unusual landscaping choices because apparently having a garden with vibrant colors was against the rules. Things escalated one weekend when I hosted a small gathering for friends. We were laughing and having a great time when Greg stormed over, red-faced and furious. He yelled at us to keep it down, claiming we were ruining the peaceful atmosphere of the neighborhood. I could feel my blood boiling. Instead of letting him get to me, I smiled and said, "Thanks for your feedback, Greg. We'll keep that in mind," but inside, I was plotting my revenge. Here's where things got interesting. What Greg didn't know was that I was actually quite wealthy. I had built my fortune through years of hard work in tech and investments, but chose to live modestly for personal reasons. Now it was time to show him that wealth isn't always about flashy cars and big houses. I decided to take advantage of his arrogance and ignorance. I started researching local laws regarding noise complaints and neighborhood regulations. It turned out that Greg had been violating several HOA rules himself, like parking his boat on the street and not maintaining his yard properly. I decided to take advantage of his arrogance and ignorance. I started researching local laws regarding noise complaints and neighborhood regulations. It turned out that Greg had been violating several HOA rules himself, like parking his boat on the street and not maintaining his yard properly. After gathering all my evidence, I filed formal complaints against him with the HOA. I documented everything: photos of his boat taking up space on the street, pictures of his unkempt lawn, and even statements from other neighbors who were tired of his attitude. During the meeting, I presented my evidence clearly and calmly. As I laid out each violation he had committed, you could see the color drain from his face. The board members were shocked. They had always seen him as a model resident because of his loud personality. By the end of the meeting, Greg was facing fines for each violation and was put on notice for future infractions. As he left the meeting room, he shot me a glare that could have melted steel. The best part, word spread through the neighborhood about what happened. Suddenly, people who had been intimidated by Greg's loud demeanor started coming to me with their own stories about his behavior. They felt empowered to speak up now that someone had taken a stand. As for me, I continued living my life quietly but confidently. Greg tried to make my life miserable after that, complaining about everything from my lawn decorations to how many guests I had over, but it didn't matter anymore. He knew he couldn't bully me without facing consequences. Eventually, he moved out, probably because he realized he couldn't win against someone who wouldn't back down. And as he packed up his things one day, I couldn't help but smile, knowing that sometimes revenge is best served not with anger but with strategy. So there you have it. How one seemingly ordinary person turned racial discrimination into an empowering story of justice, and how sometimes being rich is about more than just money. It's about knowing your worth and standing up for yourself.